My mom told me not to talk to strangers on the internet, but I'm glad I didn't listen. We are the Certified Noonas, your sisters in the love of Asian entertainment.
Hi, I'm Jessie.
And I'm Natalia, and that's right, it's us again.
That's it.
Can't get
Just
rid
the
of
two
us.
of us.
It's us. We're back again.
We're back.
Guess who's back? Back again.
We're back as the zombie unit. However, this is going to be the first of the zombie unit stuff we put out because Jessie has been lazy and hasn't edited our happiness.
Fine, man. Like
I just need to sit down and do it, and I swear I'll do it. But
it'll happen.
It'll happen.
This is relevant. This is relevant right now.
This is like brand new.
That's right. We're doing an episode on the new Netflix show based on a webtoon, which is All of Us Are Dead, which I think is a great title for what we're about to discuss.
Yes.
Which is a delightful high school coming of age slice of life,
just drama
set amidst
there's a little bit of romance.
There is not too much, set amidst the backdrop of a revenge fueled zombie apocalypse.
It's pretty simple, and it's
pretty simple in its concept, pretty great in its execution, I would say, and is a solid show, and we're going to talk about it. Pre-warning, as always, there will be spoilers. So if you were planning on watching it and haven't watched it yet,
go watch it.
Probably go watch it before coming here. If you either have watched it and want to hear what we thought about it, or you are terrified of zombies and we're never going to watch it, but just want to know what's up with it, welcome, friends. And if you have seen it and want to hear what we're thinking, also,
welcome.
Come on in. We love it when you come and hang out with us.
We love it. I mean, like, we do have a bit of that, like, social anxiety. We don't like a lot of people, but, like, we'll allow people to come and listen to us talk about zombies.
We may not want to hang out in a crowd, but we do love having you come and listen.
This is a safe space for all of us.
Yeah. Hey, listen, all I'm saying is the less crowds you hang out with, the less people there are to bite you when the zombie apocalypse comes. So, Jessie, take it away. What is All of Us Are Dead about?
I wanted to first talk about, like, the writer and the director. So the director of this is E.J. Yu. His most recent work was Trap, the drama. It just happened, like, last season or the season before. I never saw it, so I don't have any comments on it. And when I was looking through the list, the one title that jumped out to me as probably his most famous work, or what I would assume is his most famous work, he was the director for the Modern Monarchy Kingdom Hearts,
Yeah,
which
he was.
We actually, years ago, this was our first year that we started doing podcasting.
It was one of our first deep dives.
It like, we didn't do a super deep dive on it, but we did a fairly big chunk on it. We did a whole episode on modern monarchies, and it's a smorgasbord of dramas that are about monarchies, and Kingdom Hearts is a full, like, kind of a full section because a couple of the people on the podcast had watched it. The writer is Chun Sung-il, and his most recent work is Luca, The Beginnings, which was a drama from last season. It's a sci-fi thriller about evolution. I watched it. I enjoyed it. It had some, like, meh parts about it, but I enjoyed it. He's also on the newest pirate movie that's coming out.
Yeah, he wrote both of them, both the pirates.
As Natalia said earlier, this is based on a webtoon, and it was released back in 2009. It ran from 2009 to 2011 by Ju Dong-gun. It's the same name, even though it's, like, you could probably only find it with its Hangul name, which I'm already butchering people's names. I don't need to butcher that as well and try to read Hangul. I can kind of do it, but I don't want to do it. But basically, it's a high school zombie drama. The show is about a zombie outbreak that happens in a high school, but it's a little bit different than kind of most zombie dramas in that this is a revenge-based outbreak. So it's not like it's just, like, something that happens naturally, or like animals or something like this. This is kind of a direct retaliation because of the amount of bullying that is happening at the school, and that hasn't been addressed, and it's been covered up to keep kind of, like, the prestige of the school and in favor of the school, especially because it's set in a smaller town. So this is kind of like their main high school. And the person who they created the virus was the science teacher Lee Byung-chan, who you find out his son was part of the bullying attacks. Like you see in the very beginning in the first episode that he's kind of pushed off the building. So he kind of makes this zombie thing out of retaliation for all the wrongdoings that are happening, and nobody's like doing anything about it. But technically the outbreak doesn't actually happen exactly the way he wants it to, because he's a science teacher, so he's been doing like experiments and stuff, and so he had been waiting to like finalize his studies before he released it. But one of the students found a lab rat that he had been working on. She got bit, then she became the first, you know, what it was, like patient zero, is that what they call it? Patient X? What do they call it? The first person.
Patient zero.
Zero. And she is also the reason how the zombie virus is taken off campus, because they just assume she's like hurt and sick, and so she gets onto like ambulance and then sent to the hospital. They go into a bit about like why he's doing it, but it seems like he actually intended it for mostly to be the high school, and he was actually just targeting the high school and the teachers in it. And so the rest of the drama, and it's a 12-episode drama, is kind of us following a group of students who have initially survived the main kind of like pulse of the virus, because obviously it's a zombie thing, and it goes up like, you know, 2 seconds, you've infected 90% of the population or killed most of the people. And so it's like us following this core group as they try to get out and to safety. A couple of the members or the students know each other and are close, but not all of them. And so it's kind of focusing on that, focusing them as teens trying to be resourceful and stay alive. We do have some sub stories where they kind of show what's going on in the outside world. They actually favor mostly the kids in the school in that sort of respect. This was announced at the end of 2020. They began production in 2021. However, they were delayed because of COVID, not because cast members got COVID. They just were delayed because they had to stop production and
COVID in general.
Yeah, there was that period where you couldn't have more than like 6 people in a room or whatever. I think that's when they had to kind of stop production, and then they were able to come back. So that's why it kind of took a little bit longer for All of Us Are Dead to kind of happen. The director specifically wanted to film as many one-shots as possible. So there's a focus in the drama of doing things in one take, which meant they spent a lot of time rehearsing. The cafeteria scene is a one-take shot.
Which, if you've seen it, that's fucking wild.
It's crazy.
So the show does have 2 main characters. And the 2 main characters are 2 lifelong best friends who live right next to each other, which is Namon-ju, who's a girl, and then Lee Cheong-san, who's a gentleman. And he's played by Yoon Chan-young, who fucking killed it, okay? I have seen a lot of zombie things in my day, but I have never seen a zombie apocalypse MVP as sick as the character as Lee Cheong-san. That kid is the slipperiest motherfucker who has ever lived. Like, oh, the zombies thought they could catch him? Oh, but bitch, I think not. Like, just when you think he's out, he ain't out. He's the most resourceful motherfucker you've ever seen in your life. But he will survive.
What I do think that like the show did really well is that it wasn't afraid to like get rid of people when they needed to get rid of people. And that's what I actually really liked about his character, because he basically dies episode 10 or 11. Like he doesn't finish out.
No, but he
goes out. He goes out in like a lot, like
spoiler alert. He goes out in a literal blaze of glory to protect his friends. That he chooses to die. It's not that he gets killed. It's that he chooses that he is done fighting this zombie apocalypse and is choosing not to live. And respect, mad respect. So he's in the cafeteria with his best friend, who he totally doesn't have a crush on. Okay?
Oh no, totally. They're
just friends.
They're just friends, okay?
And she has a very realistic reaction to suddenly seeing all of everyone she knows starting to eat each other's faces off, which is to just literally
freeze,
fall over and freeze and be like, the fuck? And then, but he's like, not today. So there's always like fight, flight, and freeze, right? Those are the three things that happen in a crisis to someone. She freezes, but he's like, nah, bitch, fight, motherfucker. Like, he's like, get your ass up, get out this window. I'm just gonna like beat people with like trays, with chairs. I'm gonna kick them. I'm gonna do whatever to get you out of here, to get me out of here. Fuck this shit. We're out. It's like he's been preparing his whole life.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna be your savior.
He's like, listen, I look like a wiry, like, skinny dude, and I am, but that just means I can fit into small places and, like, duck and weave around everything that comes around me. I cannot be stopped. He's incredible and acts very well. He's an incredible actor. He's, like, he really everything is. I've ever seen him in is, he's very young. Like, he was in
Nobody Knows, and he was fantastic in it. The whole cast is kind of fairly unknown, but they have some of them are a little bit people more known than I would call fairly unknown, but like the cast is like kind of like not the like superstars. Like you're not going to find anybody who's like super well known, but
to be honest, like I'm looking at the cast and I feel like the one that, of course, it has Bae Sun in it. She'll come up later. We love her. She was also in Happiness. Very different character in this, but still somewhat related, but we'll talk about that later. But the guy who plays the cop, Lee Kyu-hung, he shows up in all sorts of things. He was also in Happiness. And then there's one student who plays, she's an archery student. She's on the archery team, Hasunri. She shows up in a lot of things. So she's one of those that you're like, oh, wait.
Yeah, there's a couple.
I recognize her.
And like, I mean, you have like someone like Lee Yumi who plays Nayeon, who I'm sure we're going to talk about like a lot. She was just in Squid Game. There's a good amount of people in here that that like are pretty well known, but I know that the director specifically kind of was focusing on a lot of realism in it, and I think that's why he focused on unknowns and try to pick people who are kind of closest to high school age and not try to like go so far out.
Or like they're in high school age.
Or like, you know, do this thing where they're like purposely trying to get people on because they know that their star power will get people. Yeah. They kind of focus more on it being kind of a more believable, realistic take on things as opposed to...
And let's be honest, it's on Netflix. You don't need to have star power to get people to watch stuff on Netflix. So.
Also, let's be honest, it's Korean entertainment. We all know who these people are if we watch Korean entertainment. Yeah. There's not that big of a pull.
I also have to say, so there's this plot line involving these two people who are severely bullied by the school bullies, including a girl who is sexually assaulted by the school bullies. And this is her first ever show.
Oh, wow.
This was her first thing. It's her only thing, like her only credit that I see here. You know, like they could have messed up on Asian Wiki, but they're usually pretty on the ball here.
Well, let's jump in and talk about that, because I think this was a thing that came up a lot. Like I saw an article or maybe someone was
and I feel like there was a bit of a misconception about
it was very clearly someone who didn't actually watch anything or only watch up until that point, which the assault happens literally within the first half of the first episode. The first like scenes of the show are them bullying the son of the science teacher. So you already get that. And then you only get a little bit of the school life before this sexual assault happens.
Yeah.
And I think people were kind of misconstruing it and not understanding what it was like actually representing, because the biggest thing about this show, and it's over like all kind of focus, was to focus on what people are doing to fail students and high school age people. And they were focusing on a lot of like key things, and one of them being this bullying and sexual assault, which does happen. So it wasn't just this frivolous thing that they just decided to throw in like randomly. It was to show what is actually going on in high schools.
So it goes into her, like, she has a whole plot line you know, like that you go into her background where she has actually sought help from teachers, and the teachers essentially said, well, what are you doing that makes them want to bully you? Like basically victim blaming her, which is a big problem in most societies, but especially patriarchal societies such as, you know, Korea is. Still not exclusive to Korea. Let's be honest. We're
and also
not doing a
in
call
a
out
place
here.
where like status is like key, and so having these type of like things happening in the school would frown upon the, you know, the school board and the teachers who work there and that sort of thing. So they kind of try to, like every place does, kind of shush it under the rug and sweep it under the rug. And so like
this article that a lot of people were citing before even watching the show was like, oh, the, you know, show is under fire for showing like misogynistic, and it's like, no, that was kind of the point, because here's the thing. Shows oftentimes, especially horror shows and like monster stuff like zombies, they're not actually about zombies.
No.
The themes are trying to tell you something about if you haven't figured out life.
Horror is mostly social commentary.
Yes. So the social commentary that one could, I think I summed it up by saying, fuck them kids. Because that's essentially what society has done to children, and especially teens, by sort of making teens and education a commodity for capitalism and not as a means to an end of themselves. So they actually go into a big discussion, not a big discussion, but like there's like a whole scene about it where the students have basically at this point realized, I don't think anyone is coming to help us. Like, I think we are alone here. And then one of the students says, well, is Korea a place where it's sadder if children die or if adults die? And that's basically asking, what does our society value more? Do they value children and what children bring for the future, or do they value adults? And then it's very clearly shown that the writer of probably the original webtoon really hit on the point that children are not seen as valuable entities in and of themselves, because now Comrade Natalia is coming out, so watch out everyone. In a capitalistic society, and we can definitely say that Korea is definitely a very capitalistic, patriarchal society, if you are not making money for the state, and the state here as seen by capitalist entities that control basically the politics of your nation, which they do in most capitalistic technological nations, children are useless until they can be made basically proletariat, worker cogs in the machine. They're not useful. So hence why school, the purpose of school isn't to educate students, the purpose of school is to create workers.
Yeah. And there's another kind of like side overarching thing that they're trying to do in this one. And you see there's like a scene, like it's one of the last scenes in the show. There's a line that the school president, Namra, says, and it was like, you know how they say when you're in high school, you're not children, and yet you're not adults, and you're in this gray area. And the show kind of like focuses on that as like these children who, they're still children, but old enough to kind of understand what's going on around them, is kind of feeling the brunt of everything that's going on and feeling the weight of the adults failing them. And this high action, high death count situation, and they're kind of stuck in this limbo because they aren't awarded the like same like cognitive dissonance of a baby in this situation, as opposed to them who are like at that point knowing. And I think that was like a really great thing the show kind of really encapsulates, is that high school students have it hard, and when you have these other things that are like making it harder for them, what are you really doing? Like allowing these like bullying things to happen so that like the other kids around are scared to confront the bullies, because they know at this point they're not like elementary kids, they know that they're not going to get any help from the people around them.
Yeah.
And they see it, and it's constantly like hammered into this with not even just like what was happening at the school before, but the actions that happen with the military brigade and how they focus on everything and how they kind of just like leave them.
The message is that teenagers and young adults recognize and realize that they are on their own in a lot of ways, and that they will be blamed for things, but they will not be helped. So that's sort of really taken that concept of like, we're taking the concept of how real teenagers actually probably feel, even if they can't articulate this themselves, and putting it in an extreme situation that is reinforcing the reality that they're on their own, literally and figuratively.
And these are real true things that are happening. This is not like it just did it just to do it. This is happening, whether you are the person that it happened to, or you know of someone, or know of someone who knows of someone who had happened. This is actually what's happening. And I think what that article failed to realize, that it wasn't done in like a showy way, or gratuitous way. And I get that maybe the actual act being shown, that I can understand them not liking, but I will say that it's not long.
No, it's a very quick scene.
It's a very quick scene, so it's not like they kind of linger on it. I felt that like the way that they portrayed that scene, because there were a lot of people around. So you had the core main bully group, and then you had like kind of the friend or
fellow victim.
Yeah, victim kid who was there. He couldn't stop everything happening because he was a bully itself. And you kind of see another one of the main actual cast, Soo Hyuk. He actually kind of sees it. And I think
and tries to stop it legitimately.
Well, he kind of tries to stop it, but he doesn't do a good enough job. And I think the problem is that a lot of people saw that and were like, the show is saying that this is an acceptable thing, and it's like not showing it, but it's also showing it that like there are a lot of things that could prevent students from not saying anything, because the thought of not knowing that nothing will happen. The kid who is like kind of her friend, he would have been bullied and probably beat up and left for dead if he tried. Soo Hyuk, he's one of the popular boys, so it would mean that he probably would have something bad happen to his all of his transfer stuff and that sort of thing. And that's honest, a very realistic thing. Like the
character of Lee Soo Hyuk, Lee, sorry, I just combined his name because it's Lee Soo Hyuk. Lee Soo Hyuk. He does do all that he, in his position, can at that moment do, where he gets the bullies to stop, and then he offers to escort the victims away, and then the girl says, if I don't just let them do it, it's going to be worse tomorrow. What can he do at that moment?
Yeah.
Because it's then shown later on that not only is the administration aware, the administration has participated in suppressing these victims from being able to speak out about what is happening to them. There's a whole flashback about it. So that's basically what the show is about. It's amazingly it's not about zombies.
Not really about zombies.
Zombies might be a metaphor. They might be an allegory for something else. It's really easy for people to like look at this and be like, oh, they're sensationalizing like a real issue. And it's like, no, they really aren't.
Well, a lot of people do that just in general on like horror. A lot of people come into horror with a mindset already that's not good. And this is kind of shown in these things that they feel that like horror can't represent anything that could be good or could actually showcase these things, when in fact most horror does. Most horror is social commentary on like things that are really happening, and they're just done in a way that's a little bit more, maybe like, it depends on the person, but like easier to digest, or kind of like easier in the form of just like filmography to see it portrayed in something else, and see these villains actually become these monsters, and it's like a little bit easier for people to understand. And I think that article was just kind of doing a disservice on like all this stuff that I thought was really great in the drama. We'll talk about some of my like problems with the drama, but that was never a thing.
There is no such thing as a perfect drama.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
And I thought that they kind of handled it well, especially because we do see later on. So she spends most of her time up on the roof contemplating suicide. She actually ends up just deciding to not care anymore, and she goes down and she gets bit and she becomes a zombie. And it's a pivotal moment in our watching, because this is when we start to find something else is happening with the zombie. It's not just a full, you get bit, you become a zombie, that's it. You start to see that there's like levels to your infection.
Different people are affected by the disease in different ways.
And so one of the big things is that like the video of the assault is going to be broadcast and given out to the internet. So she decides she's going to stop that, and this is where you start to see some of the stuff. But she does have this kind of narrative where she's like going and she's like attacking, like, you know,
destroying
taking out all the cell phones, and then she actually finds one of the administrators who was pivotal in like sweeping stuff under the rug and not letting it happen, and he hasn't turned yet. And so she goes after him. And later on, because of the way that she is with her zombie outbreak, she's able to get into the like camp that they have for all the quote unquote humans,
survivors,
where the kid who was bullied, but he was still part of the, you know, whole thing, he's there, and she ends up killing him as well because he's there, and it's kind of her like last act of vengeance before she's kind of taken away by the soldiers and stuff like that. It's not like her story ever stops. It's not like we don't see any of it and there's no resolve in it, or that she isn't like at least trying to take back her voice. You actually see kind of what happens to that, and also that what happened,
that she as a person was destroyed by the actions of the adults around her.
Broke, which meant that she went to attack other people, which before it kind of showcases that whole thing that like the adults, especially like for high school students, they still don't believe that they'll like actually retaliate in that way, or that won't snap in that way. And like that kind of signifies that you can break someone to that point. Like there is a point that like someone will snap. And, you know, before she probably would have jumped off the roof, but now she's zombie attacking people. And so I don't ever think that the show was trying to mishandle that in a way. It was kind of like sad seeing that article, because it was just like,
wow, you really missed the point, huh?
You missed the point. And like, unless they had been a person who was on press screeners who got it before, there's like no way they could have gotten through the entire series before writing that post too. And I was just like, this is awkward and weird. And
like, I understand the argument that maybe they didn't have to show anything.
Yes, absolutely. I think that I understand that was argument. A actual thing.
But I've seen a lot of American shows that show far worse, far more graphic than this that aren't getting written up. So, speaking of the
mullet bully,
if you are familiar with zombie stories, zombie films, zombie TV shows, you are aware that zombies are not the villains of these shows. That's not how these work.
They can turn into zombies, so the villains can turn into zombies.
But the villains are not just the zombies. The zombies are the situation. And so there is sort of a main villain. Okay, is he a bad character? Like, is he a bad dude? Yes. Is he an incredible character with a great actor?
Yes.
Also, yes.
Yes.
Did he have a great mullet? Yes, he did.
That's why she likes him. It's no.
See, here's the thing. I don't like the character. I thought the actor was incredible. So he's not even the main bully. He's like the bully that the main bullies get to do their dirty work. So he's like the dumb bully. If like the main character, like Jong-san, is the MVP of like zombie survival, then Queen Nav, the main bully, is like the MVP of taking advantage of every situation in the evilest way possible.
That's true. He looks at her surroundings and he like
and
figures out what to do with it.
He knows how. See, there's sort of like two sides of a coin, which I thought was very interesting because like Chong San is very good at coming up with ways that he and everyone around him can survive. Whereas Queen Nam is really good at coming up with ways that he can use everyone around him so he can survive. While still being dumb as a box of rocks.
Yeah.
Box of rocks. He will sacrifice anyone to survive. Which leads to what I think was possibly the fun, like, it wasn't funny, haha funny, but I just thought it was clever funny, where the main confrontation in this whole show isn't them versus zombies. It's just the main dude versus the main bully who has been bit and is asymptomatic. So he's like one of those half zombies that the zombies ignore, that he can infect other people, but he has his full mental faculties, as little as they are, about him. But he's real pissed at the main dude because, well, there's a few things that go down. He just hates the main dude because the main dude called him a loser.
He's like the popular, like, nice kid.
Yeah, he's a nice kid that everyone likes. And then
he wants to be him, essentially, but he can't because he's a bully. You know.
So after witnessing the bully murder the principal, I'm going to say this, the principal kind of deserved it. The principal was willing to sacrifice this kid to survive. Yeah. And the kid said, fuck you, dude. And killed him. Unfortunately, was witnessed to said murder by the main character, who then basically was like, you're a fucking loser. And I just recorded this murder on my phone, so when we get out of here, you're fucked, buddy.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, guess I have to murder you too. So then that begins this whole thing where then the main dude, Chung San, basically has to beat him in the face with his phone, which then makes him lose an eye and get bit by zombies. And then he says, when I turn, I'm coming after you. And so our VIP of survival, Chong San, escapes, thinking that now the bully has been bit due to, listen, his own bullshittery, okay? It's not like he threw him to the zombies, who has decided, now that he's back and not a full zombie, he just wants to murder this kid.
And he can because none of the zombies want to attack him because they see him as a zombie.
They see him as a zombie. So they detect him as a zombie, but he can walk around and just be a fully normal person who, when he bites you, you will turn into a zombie. Yeah. Like he is semi-immune. So it adds this like extra level of like Manhunter, like within. So it's like you feel bad for the regular zombies because like they didn't ask to be zombies and they were just
most of them just kind of were at the wrong place at the wrong time. But
then you've got this fucking asshole who's just like, I want to murder, and now
of course he gets like the best like zombie reaction.
And now, through a quirk of genetics, I am the world's greatest murderer in a field death that you cannot escape. And you can throw me off a building, I will survive. You can stab me, that will do nothing. I'm coming, bitch. It's crazy. It's fucking
also
wild.
What I think is really kind of interesting in this is kind of like a parallel to the victim, right? And how she snaps because she's at her breaking point, and then she's like, I'm gonna die no matter what, so might as well take you all out with me who have been doing this stuff. And this is kind of like the parallel to that, but like this is what happens when you allow bullies be allowed to do what they do, because they will become terrible human beings. Like his pathway was, no matter what, to become a terrible human being. And even if he wasn't a zombie or not, he had a great chance of being someone who would kill another person, right?
Well, he did before he was a zombie. Yeah. Even if the zombie apocalypse had never happened, this guy was going to end up being a thug, a rapist,
And his pathway was a direct failing of the adults around him. The adults around him failed him as well.
Yeah.
Because they didn't keep him checked. They didn't take him to the specialty people that they needed to. This is what was going to happen. This is what would happen. And I think that was like a really great thing to kind of have to play off. So you have the victim who like snaps, and then you have this bully who he already thinks he's the greatest, and then you give him like a slight zombie power.
And basically the only reason that he hates the main character is because the main character accurately read him.
Yeah.
And said, you are a loser. Like, you think that you're powerful, but you just do everything that these other bullies tell you to do, and that's all you're ever gonna be.
And he has this kind of already like kind of one up because he knows that the other bullies have already turned. So he has this kind of like one up level on them because he's kind of becomes the main person of that group after the other bullies have already turned, right? So like he can now be the superior because he doesn't have the other two or whatever. That was the only people holding him back, right? Was the bullies.
They told him what to do.
Higher in their hierarchy of bully trains.
Their bullyarchy.
The bullyarchy.
But you're not only presented with that sort of bullying, because you're presented with like class commentary as well, because this school has poor and rich students, but the rich students really think that they are better.
Absolutely.
And is shown through the classic, and I think that's really, I don't want to keep going back to my old anti-capitalism rants, but I think a lot of these shows are really coming for the throat of late stage capitalism, and people do not realize that is what they're doing.
Yeah, no, it is,
because that's essentially what this show is doing, and what a lot of zombie shows do. Because when you're presented with a show that shows a breakdown of society through just a massive event, it really shows you how brittle and how poorly put together like our modern society is, and how susceptible it is to just sudden collapse. But there's also an archery team. Well, there's two members of an archery team. That's all who makes it from the initial
oh my gosh
situation.
Their biggest thing is that they've just come back from a competition where they've lost, and that's their only reason they're back at that school. They could have literally just stayed in their bus and rode off and potentially have been fine, but they don't.
But unfortunately the captain of the archery team's little brother, she knows he's in school.
Yeah, and she's
leave like him. I fucking love my little brother. She's so good. And okay, you know who I really loved? So it was the captain, and then she had like an underclassman who was basically like her little assistant.
Yeah, her assistant, and also
with a
secondary archer.
Bowl cut. Yeah, he was like a junior archer. He had a hilariously bad bowl cut, and I love him. He was so good. He's played by the actor Jin Ho Un, and has been in very few things. He was in Nevertheless in one episode, and was in Beautiful Love, Wonderful Life, and in the movie A Resistance. So he only started acting in 2019. So he is new to the acting world. Very young guy. They really gave him one hell of a bowl cut on this show. Like, it was a bowl cut. And he was so good. He was such a delightful.
He was so good. This is also like, it kind of gives us a secondary group of survivors in the school. There's only like the two really groups that we know of, and so it's just like really they're very much the rag team out of the group. Like the like main core group, a lot of them already knew each other. A lot of them were like really close friends with each other, or even best friends.
Yeah, they were all like in the same class.
They kind of had that advantage of like, you know what, they still needed to come to terms with each other and kind of develop a relationship, but they already were there. But like you get this like other little rag team, because it's a girl and her pseudo friend, but obviously
they're not really friends.
But like they were kind of were. It was kind of one of those like they hated each other type things, but like
Yeah.
when push came to shove, they were like best friends type deal, and it's not just in the situation type thing. And they had been in one of the school bathrooms and they got out, and so they met up with these two Archer students. And so there's this whole like plot line with them, and it's actually pretty really great because at like one point the male of the two that were in the bathroom together, he gets injured, and so they have to do a lot of stuff where they're like dragging him on a cart and stuff, and just
like this actually brings me to something that I really love about Korean zombie things as versus Western zombie things, because most Western zombie stuff is made in America. In American zombie stuff, survival is based a lot on how many guns you can find. And so there's a lot of focus on, like blowing off zombies' heads and, like fucking building tanks out of Hummers or whatever. That doesn't exist in Korea. There aren't guns, okay?
Yeah.
Like, even police officers do not carry guns generally. So the inventiveness that they come up with on these Korean shows of what these people use that they have around them is a lot more enjoyable for me. So, for example, like, at one point, they're literally ripping windows out of their sills and using them as battering rams, and like pulling like pocket doors off of their hinges to use as battering rams.
So they can like go down hallways and stuff.
Yeah, and they're breaking into the nurse's office to steal like bandages and medical tape to wrap around their arms so they can't get bit. Or they're, going into, janitor's closets and taking mops and, like breaking them into sharpened sticks. And there's this whole plot near the end where they're stuck in the gymnasium, and they have all like the little like racks that are full of balls that are on wheels. Like, you remember them from your high school days. Check all the volleyballs in them, where they're like zip tying them together to form like a shield out of ball pens. Like, it's so inventive the way that these, writers and set designers come up with these, stunts involving things that would be in a high school, because there wouldn't be any guns or weapons in this high school.
Unless you're part of an archery team. But what
I like about it is the archery team was a well-established central part of this high school before the zombies came about.
Well, and so it's it's like a well-established thing in like just general schools. It's a very popular sport there.
Archery, which is great. Like, my school had an archery setup.
I mean, just watch the Olympics. So oh god, what are they called? I can't even remember anymore. The Isaacs. We're just like, normally every idol is perfect at archery.
So good at archery. So that like makes sense. But it's like, in part of this archery student thing is they have to get to the gymnasium, like the archery gymnasium, because they are running out of arrows. They have points where after they shoot a zombie, if the zombie's dead, they'll try to get the arrow back.
They'll try to rip it out,
It's so well thought out in that sense that I personally find it more enjoyable than, like, listen, I've seen The Walking Dead. I get it.
Well, this points back to the fact that the director really wanted it to be the most realistic he possibly could with it. So those are the little things I think that like he purposely tried to implement in it, where with the one takes, I think like you see that because it's like so realistic, because it is kind of essentially what everybody's like reacting to it, to everything going on. And so like those little things also kind of help out, because yes, there's always going to be some unrealistic thing, because like, do we think those kids would have survived? No. Like, may use all this stuff that's very realistic, but would they have thought about using that stuff in that time period?
You never know, but generally
never know. But I think that's like what the director was really like trying to focus on, in the realism of everything with like these little things.
There are people that in crisis become incredibly focused. There are people that, and I actually, statistically speaking, they've done studies on this. This is where the show's a little unrealistic, is that it's mostly women who are really
Oh
good in
yeah,
crisis situations.
because they're supposed to. Like
Yeah,
we've been trained to.
yeah, they do very well because one of the main female character is the daughter of a fireman who used to be in the special forces.
Who is my favorite character out
He's
of
so
the
great.
entire show. I
He's so
love
great.
him.
He's so great. And she's the one who comes up with the good ideas.
Yes.
And because she's the one coming up with the good ideas and saying what everyone should be thinking, I feel like many people watching the show, from what I have seen comment-wise, did not like her character. And I think, respectfully, they are wrong.
Oh yeah, and I think
absolutely incorrect
the
by
problem
being like, she's unrealistic, she's not a good character, I'm like, no,
but like she also has to be the character who's kind of like the one really showing us what's going on, because we don't have this like any sort of internal monologue on all these characters, right? Because we're watching a thing, and she kind of becomes the personification of that, and she's always around, like for the most part, in the situations. And I think, you know, maybe some of the hate is because she communicates that well, and maybe like people are like, don't like over explain or whatever, or they probably hate it because they wanted more of the two male leads. Who knows?
Who knows? Listen, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but
she's like really great at stuff. I think we should touch back on the bullies, because we didn't talk about like the main bully that we see for a while, and I kind of want to parlay this into part of what I didn't like about the show. Our main thing, and this is actually kind of going back into where you kind of touched on it before we started talking about the archers, is about the power play on people. So our main conflict in the very beginning with the group of survivors is Nayan, who is a bully, and she's kind of the classic bully. She is the entitled bully, mean girl. She does pretty much nothing. She gets into all the rooms first because she's not the one helping out with the battering rams, but kind of like attacks everyone for not doing their like job and stuff. I think that was like an interesting to kind of show the power dynamic, because you also have in this group Nam Ra, who was the class president. And so in the sense of like the school hierarchy, the class president is supposed to be the higher one, but because of Nayan's like prestige and where she is, she play in between them, because it's very apparent that before they had not even been respecting Namra's position as the class president and that sort of thing.
And Namra very clearly says this, and she's like, I know I was only class president because my mom is rich and donated money to the school, and none of you ever considered me actually your class president.
Yeah. And I think that the character is hated by a lot. And she also, like the actress, EU Me, she actually talks about in some of the interviews, she like prepared to be the hated one. She was like, I'm gonna be the hated one. And I saw a lot of people like talking about her. And well, I like, yes, she was annoying, but she kind of just like embodied a like character that we all have. Like we all have that type of bully, you know, because there's just like these levels to the bullies. And like, so maybe like the mullet bully is not someone you ever like encountered in life, because he is kind of sort of the more rare when you get into like
situational bully,
when you get into a dangerous bully. And then you have this person who is dangerous in like a way that she can affect someone. It depends on the other person's mental state and that sort of thing, but she's kind of like the everyday bully. And I think it was kind of interesting to see that play out, because I think some of those bullies would also still have that kind of reaction, even in these like types of things where like you're not doing the best, even though I'm not holding up my weight on stuff. It also grounded the whole entire show into reminding you that these were still kids. These were still high school kids. And I kind of really liked that they had that as a thing with her character, that it was just like a constant reminder of things. And also through her, we actually are introduced to the one of the staff members who was actually the best, who is
Park Sun-hwa, the character, but played by Lee Sang-hee, who's in a shit ton of stuff.
It's kind of the only one who you could tell who was going to bat for the kids, to the point where she was in like a meeting beforehand about this like situation that was occurring. You know, they were all in like one room, and she's like, we have to tell the students that this is happening, and they were like, we're not going to. And she kind of risked her life to get in. I really like that she had this like kind of one character of the adults, because we don't see a lot of the adults unless they become zombies, right? Like most of the time we only saw like the like cafeteria staff too. Like there wasn't a lot of adults in the actual building as opposed to outside of the building. So there was just this kind of like really great moment of us like reminding ourselves on where we are, and reminding ourselves that these are high school students. We're watching high school students have to be adults very quickly. Here's the thing that I did not like. Overall, I think the show had too many main characters, and the writer could not handle that many characters. Because a lot of the characters' storylines just dissipate into thin air, and you don't really see what happens to them. And I'm not talking about the ones that like potentially could have like become zombie or not, you know, and I'm not like talking about that, but these are some of these main characters. You don't get a resolve in their arc of their character, and she is one of those characters, because the way that like things happen is that after like a standoff and fight and stuff, she like leaves the room in like a huff and like goes out into the, and you don't see her for several episodes or whatever. So you don't know what's happening with her. We never get really like a good resolve with her character, and like we don't actually kind of really get the like closure with the teacher who goes out to try to help her and save
you never actually find out what happens to that teacher.
It's like you assume that she's kind of dead. Like
you can make a fair assumption that she's gone, but
like I want to stem into this with characters that also kind of just, they don't get a great character arc. They like start to be really great, and then it's kind of just like rush to get them off. The ones I'm talking about is the main police
characters, the police officers,
and the
oh my god, I fucking loved
streamer,
them,
and like because the streamer comes into their party later. So like they didn't have the biggest role, okay? And we were talking the other day, right after I had finished it. We were talking about how like EQ Young, who plays the lead officer, who's actually interrogating the scientist, the teacher who started everything. He always plays these like secondary characters who are main vital characters.
They're vital to the plot,
but they never become more than like secondary or like smaller characters. And because that's what happened to him in Happiness. Like he had like a vital part, and it just kind of
and then he just sort of disappears for most of the show, and then shows up at the end.
They start off, you kind of see them because you get the like trickle of like scenes outside of what's going on in the school. And then you kind of like develop this like big like character thing with him and the other police officer.
You begin to care about
you begin to
characters.
Care. It's like that he stops caring to write for it.
I have to actually talk about this arc. So this arc actually does start in the high school, because it starts with this girl who, as soon as she got up to go to the nurse's office, I knew what was up. So there's this character, her character name is Park Hee-soo. She's played by Lee Chan-eun, who is also very, very young. She's 16 years old, the actress playing, or 17 years old. This is her first TV show. She was on a lot of movies, though. She goes to the nurse's office to get help because her stomach hurts, though we can figure out where this is going because we've seen a show before. But then the girl who was bit by the zombie gets like brought in, or bit by the zombie mouse gets brought in, like right at the beginning. So she just leaves school. Turns out she was preggo and is in labor. Now, this is actually a very realistic, and this is like another instance of
one of those beats. Yeah.
So it's like adults failing this
part
girl
of the like bullying and that sort of thing. Yeah. It's like,
so, in that you know, so she then goes and gives birth in a public bathroom stall, and is prepared to abandon her baby. But then as soon as she leaves the public bathroom stall, realizes that there are zombies fucking everywhere. So she's like, well shit, I can't abandon this baby now. So she goes back and gets the baby, gets bit, goes into a chicken restaurant. The chicken restaurant, this whole other plot that's really not that important for what we're talking about. And then leaves the baby on one side of the shop and ties herself to the door as she's turning, becoming one of the few responsible adults doing right by children in this show. And the other adults that do right by children are these two fucking cops. Okay, so this detective basically escapes the police precinct after being the person investigating the scientist who invented the zombie virus, and the scientist tells him where to find all of his research notes so that are at the school. So he's like, okay, he now has a mission, and then everyone gets turned at the police precinct. So he's like, okay, I gotta get out of here because I now have a mission to get to like the disaster relief people and tell them how to find this laptop that has all of like the information we need to cure this, like to stop this zombie plague. So then he meets up with this like rookie cop who is like, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Scared of everything.
He's like the most everyman. The most everyman.
He's like, what happens after that? Or like, what if this happens? And he's like,
and he's just like, no, we have a goal. We have to go to this place. And so he's dragging this like poor rookie cop with him. They end up at the chicken shop where they find the baby. And this detective's like, well, I can't, like, and the rookie cop's like, okay, it's just a baby. We can just leave the baby. And this detective's like, we can't fucking leave a baby? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you, buddy? Like, I get that you're scared, but it's a baby. So he's like zipping the baby into his coat, and he's like, okay, we're gonna take this motorcycle, like this delivery motorcycle outside the chicken shop. We're gonna bring the baby with us. And then just as they're about to leave, a little kid appears whose mom has just turned, like we're talking like 4 years old. And so then they acquire another child. Ike's like, okay, well, we can't leave now. Like, we now have a 4-year-old. Meanwhile, previous to this, it's important to note there was someone else who, when this had all, so this all takes place over like 72 hours. Like, it's a very condensed time frame that this show takes place over. And right at the beginning, where, you know, these students are using their illicit phones that they've kept to tweet out like what the fuck shit is going down at the high school, people are not believing, like outside of this small town, are not believing that any of this is happening. So this YouTuber decides to go like live stream this town to see if, is this really happening? So this idiot YouTuber is just made the worst possible life decision that he could possibly have made. And it's just so, the show will keep intercutting back to his live stream of him being like, oh fuck. And meanwhile, and it'll have the comments of people being like, this is fucking fake. Like, this is so fake. Like, lame. Like, oh, he's gonna get eaten by his, like, you know, as a live stream would very accurately be in this situation. So they then meet up with this live streamer, and then they become like, they're
it's
so
kind of
delightful.
Like, just in their storyline, they are like the buddy cop horror comedy.
But it's not like it's not like slapstick or over the top comedy. It's very relatable.
It's slapstick in that they're just like not the people you want to save these people. Like, it's in that respect, but it's not. They're not
the people that should be in charge of saving
They're
anyone.
Just incompetent.
But they're the only ones there.
The only person who's good is the main police guy, and he's really not the best. And it kind of seems like maybe he's more of like I question people and that's it. I'm not like
he's like a desk dude.
Yeah, he's not like, out in the streets, but
in his defense, he was like, I'm gonna save these kids. And he's literally the only, well, with the exception of the main girl's father, who is the fire rescue guy.
Yeah.
He is the only person invested in actually saving the children.
Kids. Yeah.
Because there is another element of this show that we haven't even got into, which is the military. And what I actually liked about the military plot, it follows the guy who's put in charge of this sort of the military response to what is happening.
Because they go in under martial law in this town. Yeah. So it's whatever they decide they can do.
So it's following this like general or whatever, or this military guy who's like put in charge of the response team. And doing like the quarantine and like, you know, any military operations that have to go down with this, you know. And so he's the one who has to make all the choices about who to save, how to save people, who lives, who dies. And it actually shows that this is not like, he doesn't have an easy time with it. And what I really liked about it is, since it's showing his perspective, you do fully understand why he made all the choices that he did. Even if you don't agree with them, they make sense logically. But then it shows, the other hand, the poor teenagers who are not infected, stuck in the high school, that he actively chooses to abandon to their own death. So the military actually shows up to rescue them.
Well, the military,
this was awful.
The military comes to the high school to get the serums and laptops and all that stuff that the science teacher had for a potential,
try to get like cure.
Figure out what's going on and find out the cure and find out like how far this could go, right? And so they're like, okay, as long as we do this mission, we'll come back and get you. And so they're like, that's fine. They like get their stuff out of the science lab and come back up. They're literally hooking up kids to bring them up to the helicopter. This is when the girl who was assaulted in the very beginning, she attacks the guy at the camp. At the
quarantine camp. Yeah.
So that's when they find out that you might have dormant or asymptomatic zombies. And so they can't risk bringing up the kids into the helicopter with the laptop if one of them is to turn. And at that point, they technically do have a zombie in their midst, because there's a lot of stuff we can't talk about because this like show packs in way too much
there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff going on.
At this point, just know that at this point, the class president Namra, she had been bit, and she is one of those that
asymptomatic zombies.
Asymptomatic that can also like prevent herself from fully going to be a zombie. The guy was like, just shoot them, just kill them, because we can't you can't trust that they're not zombies. And you could see the like struggle in the crew that was there, and then they had to kind of just like leave the kids there, and it was just this ultimate betrayal of adults again to the kids.
So because before this happened, one of the girls who they make a drone at one point. They do a whole ton of shit. That's just like, there's so much stuff that goes on. And then she sees that her parents have been both turned into zombies because her parents tried to come to the school to get her when they found out that basically any parent that attempted to come to the school, zombies. None of these children have parents at the end of this show. They find a video camera, and they all make like little video messages, and hers is basically, I want everyone who didn't help us to pay for what has happened to us. And that's basically the entire theme of the show, is that even if it's not in a zombie apocalypse, society is failing children in a huge way, but will never pay for it, even if they should. Like, education is failing children, social structures are failing children, capitalism is failing children, and there's literally no recourse for it. But one adult does come. One adult!
My favorite adult!
One adult makes the trek. That's right. Our sweet man, our sweet, delightful ex-military special forces turned
emergency response,
His name is Nam Soju, but he's played by Jun Bae-soo, who's in like a billion things.
Yes.
Like, if you see him, you're like, oh, that guy. Like, my husband, who barely watches K-dramas, is like, hey, I know that guy. Yes, you do. He literally does the most. He escapes a quarantine camp. He fucking gets shot. He creates like a path for the kids to follow. He literally does everything to try to save these children, and then does.
Yeah.
And then does.
He's the reason that those kids live. He really is.
He and the main male lead are the reason those kids live.
So he eventually gets turned into a zombie because he kind of
he chooses to.
He lures the zombies onto like a tennis court and then gets the kids to go off to run because he wants them to run to the nearest town, and he locks himself in with them. And at this point, the only thing that the military thinks that they can do to save the rest of Korea is to bomb the school
and the
to
town.
get rid of and the town to get rid of all this thing. That's what happens. They bomb the school.
The most obvious like metaphor of the failure of society towards children. They literally blow up the school.
Like, we're just gonna blow it up and try not to talk about it. It does have kind of a sad turn, because you are seeing that this really is like someone who's just trying to figure out the best route, and it's a zombie apocalypse, and who knows this is the best route, because it's something that like nobody ever thought would happen, but also like how are you supposed to like just try to do the best you can. And it ends up with him actually committing suicide after that, because of all the stuff that happened.
Which is what I really liked about this like military arc, is that even though you're like, this is ridiculous, but at the same time you're like, but I get it.
Yeah.
I get why that would be the choice that
like I didn't feel that like anything that they did was not be some sort of like, as someone who's not in the military, I don't know, they probably do have actual like protocols and stuff for zombies or something, but like
in Canada they do. They had a whole in Canada they had the parliamentary debate about like, zombies
for anything really. It was so realistic in that way that like you understood, because like what were you going to do? It was something that's so infectious, and you needed to get rid of the most, and the epicenter was the school, and a lot of the zombies were kind of staying around there, right? Because the town was already small. So like once you like turned all the people, for the most part, you're only like there's stragglers of humans around that the zombies are going to try to like
and basically they discovered that like since the zombies are attracted to sound, if they played sound in like very central locations, all the zombies would show up to those central locations, and then they could bomb those central locations and get rid of the most, and then basically send in the military to clean up the stragglers afterwards.
It's like very realistic, and I do like that we got to see the way that they were doing stuff. You saw what was happening, and you had that like different perspective that like you wouldn't have if you were just like focused on the kids too. And in a way, it was kind of more of like another level of like adults betraying them, but like in that like way that like you think an adult is betraying you when you're that young, but really they're just trying to do the best they can, like the feelings of like a parent who is just trying to do the best they can in a situation that they don't know that they what to do. And so I like that we had that kind of thing.
I saw some comments by people who liked the webtoon who were like, I don't see why they, had to put all these other plot lines involving like, the military and stuff. And I was like, no, I actually understand why they did. And I think it added a lot of dimension to the story in the sense that then you empathize with both sides, right? So it's like when the military literally abandons the kids after giving them just the hope that they're going to be rescued, like you're not just like, wow, that was a dick move, like that doesn't even make sense. Now you're like, oh, it was a dick move, but
what else? I think also like I think it needs to be addressed, even though the webtoon went on for a while, it still started in 2009, and so much has changed in the world, and especially like as a COVID place, like even though like it probably was largely written at the beginning or before COVID ever happened, I think that like that has a huge effect on it. Like 10-13 years can really change and what would happen, and I think that like would have had to have been addressed in this. I just feel like there just has to be like some emphasis in that sort of thing, and just a little bit of differences because of just us being a different society than a 2009 society. One of the things that kind of honed in on this whole thing that just kind of made it so sad, so they end up getting brought back to the camp, the survivors of the crew, and they are being interrogated by some of the people because they're like they're trying to figure out about the teacher, and they're all just kind of like very apathetic about everything. And the main girl, she says something, I screenshotted it, but I don't remember what it exactly says. And then she's like, basically, after this point, I'll never, like, I've given up hope on any adults, so you're not getting anything from me. I think it was Soo-hyuk, he said, why did you leave us? Like they asked why they left us, because there's kind of this like weight of like realizing that like a couple of the people who died past that would have been there if they had just helped them. And it was just a really like sad thing. But I did like the way that it ends, because essentially after a while of being in the camp, they Anjo, the main girl, decides that she needs to go back to the school, because she had gone to go outside of the camp one time to like pay her respects to her father, and she saw a light on top of the school. And so she was like, I know that this is Namra, like it has to be her telling us that she's there. And so she was going to go alone, and they all get together and they go up to the high school, and they meet up with Namra, who kind of informs the group that there's a group that survived and her also like her, who are kind of like the half. And that's like when she talks about like how you're not an adult, but you're not a child when you're in high school and that sort of thing. And it was this really great moment in kind of like encapsulating their journey and their relationship with each other, because they all had been so different and they had gone through so much, and they really started to really respect each other and realize that they needed to be good together because they were the only ones who could help each other. And Namra was finally having like feeling friendship and love between the others, and it was just a really nice little like moment.
I really enjoyed the ending, but I did have one question, and it was the other thing, and it was the thing that always comes up where we were discussing just like somehow like abandoned plot lines, and that is the cop plot line, very unresolved. We never find out what happens to the baby or the little kid.
So we don't find out about that.
I'm just saying, if we didn't have that politician plotline, we could have had more of the cops.
We could have.
And I would have been so happy about it, because they were a delight. And also, it was like, I assume that this cop just has a baby now. Because, like, the last you see of them, it's just the two cops in, like, a prison cell. Because they put all the quarantine camps in an old prison with the baby. And that's it. And then they have the little girl in a prison cell by herself. And I'm like, what the fuck are they doing to this little 4-year-old kid?
I think that, like, the one failing on this show is that they tried so hard to have so many characters with so many storylines. It just was too much.
Yeah. I just want to know what happened to the baby. But overall,
I had fun. I really had fun with it.
I recommended it to some people. I was like, I think you'll really enjoy this zombie show.
Like, I love that it was different. I love the commentary that they had on it. It was very fitting. I think like it did some really great things with the effects and with the way that they choreographed the zombie.
The filming is, and the stunt performance, incredible.
There is a behind the scenes little feature that they did. It's very short because they released it before the show came out. But the director is talking about how like you should watch it multiple times, because there's a lot of things you will miss when you're watching it. And then also like I would advise you to like do things like play with like lowering the dimness on your screen, or like turning up the volume really high, because you'll be able to hear the sounds that they added. And I could hear a lot of like the different sounds that they did. So I think the sound designer did a really good job at like adding some like different things to like the whole thing. And I thought it on a whole, it was a lot of fun, besides the like messiness of like over characters and maybe over story. Like that kind of central thing was really great, and I think they effectively did what they were supposed to do with the story.
And it was really well done and well acted, and
the kids were great. The kids were so good.
They were so good. I gotta give a special shout out to the actor An Sung-kyun, who played the character of Oh Jun Young, the guy with the glasses. I thought he was fantastic. Gets 2 thumbs up from old Natalia. Any closing statements? Or that was pretty much our closing statement. So yeah, this has been the horror twins. We're back. You can't get rid of us.
Really
We're always here. Talking about the Netflix show All of Us Are Dead, which we really enjoyed. You can find us to listen to more episodes of ours on certifiednoonas.com. That's our website, which has all the links and time codes, everything that we talk about, but we're on all the places where podcasts generally can be found. If you want to support this podcast, you can go to patreon.com/certifiednoonas to become a member of the Certified Found family. There are family on the web who keep the lights on at this little old podcast that we get up to. We put little extra things up there and, have a good time. Movie nights and everything. We have a good time. Anyway, we hope you have a fantastic week. Maybe check out some fun Korean zombie stuff. Hopefully we've inspired you to maybe go check out some more. Anyway, we hope you have a fantastic week and stay safe. And as always, enjoy Asian entertainment. Bye.
Bye.